Hello, I'm Junya Makino, a Japanese violin player. I've been actively playing modern music and contemporary music in Europe and Japan. I would like to share you the history of 20th century music. This is going to be a series, and today I focus on the decade from 1980 to 1990. So let's take a look at the 10 years from 1980. From 1980 to 1990, following events occurred in the world. The Iran-Iraq War broke out in the 1980s, and the internet was born in the 1990s, so things that were quite closely related to 2021 happened. And the biggest event was the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Cold War after the Malta Summit. The end of the Cold War was one of the most important events in the world that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, and people from all over the world hoped that this end would make the world peaceful. Perhaps the music world is responding to the atmosphere and that is expected to create a new world, and in the music world in the 1980s, postmodernism was flourishing worldwide. Postmodernism is a movement that fills a dead end in the avant-garde art movement that explores new styles that flourished in the 1950s and tries to get out of it. The movement specifically incorporates classical methods such as putting a melody with an easy-to-understand tonal feeling in a new style. Especially in Germany, music called New Simplicity by a composer born in the 1950s attracted attention during this period, whereas most post-war European composers found their new direction in lectures and discussion in Darmstadt workshops. Composers from Germany at the time disagreed with serialism and clusters and saw more sensual and lifelike music. As a result, complex music that mixed various styles was born. Representative composers include Wolfgang Riem, Manfred Troyan, and Hans-Jürgen von Bose. On the other hand, in the United States, composers such as George Crumb, John Corigliano, Joseph Schwantner, and Gerald Levinson come into the framework of this new simplicity. However, they are categorized in the United States as neo-romantic composers, so I'd like to introduce new simplicity and neo-romantic music separately here. John Corigliano is the current master of American contemporary music who won the Academy Award for Best Music for the movie The Red Violin. But before that, he composed the first symphony about AIDS in 1988 and became a hot topic. Neo-romantic music is not a clear musical concept like Impressionism or Expressionism because it does not have a unified claim, but we could see their commonality in the revival of self-expression and tonality of 19th century Romanticism and the inheritance of traditional forms such as symphonies and operas. In the Soviet Union, something like this neo-romantic music was composed, but polystylistic music, which is a mixture of various composition techniques, gained a lot of attention in the late 1980s when European music lost its sovereignty. Alfred Shinitoke is the leading Soviet composer of this postmodernism. But it is not the case that avant-garde music has completely disappeared in the postmodernist era. Certainly, the hot avant-garde era until the 1960s is over. However, even more avant-garde music continues along with postmodernist music. For example, New Complexity is a good example. The inventor of the New Complexity is the English composer Brian Faniher, who is often featured in this 20th Century Music History series. He wasn't auspicious since his debut, and was initially labeled as a late arriving serial. Later, he rationally pursued the flowers of tonal serialism and post-serialism, established a style that was delicately drawn to every corner of the musical score, and was gradually recognized by the world. Since the late 70s, he has been a teacher in Darmstadt workshops, from which many students were inspired by his method. As they used their composition to establish their own style, this New Complexity became a well-known school. The famous piece is Carceri d'Invenzione, a series of prints based on Piranesi's series of prints, which took several years to compose. This piece is a series of 7 pieces consisting of an ensemble and a solo work. Especially in the ensemble work, there are many things that push the limit of transcendental technique, and you can hear the devilish sound. At the Donaueschingen Festival, which enabled the performance of all pieces in this series, Faniher made his fame as a composer decisive and established himself as the best English composer of the 20th century. His students include James Dillon, Michael Finisci, and Klaus Stefan Mankow, a professor of composition at the Leipzig Conservatory. In addition, German composer Rahemann has pursued his own music concrete with musical instrument in the search for post-serial music. His work, which demands a lot of special playing techniques, inherits the avant-garde spirit of seeking unknown newness. Also, as French postmodernist music, important works such as Gondwana for orchestra by Murray was born from the spectral music group introduced last time. So in Japan, during this period, the musical flow follows the Western trends of the same era. As a new event, a new competition for composers was set up to discover the younger generation. That's all for this time, so let's summarize it. In the 1980s, postmodernism such as New Simplicity, Neo-Romanticism, New Complexity, spectral music, and polystylistic music flourished in the world. Also in Japan, competitions for composers have begun to be held, and it has become one of the guidelines for discovering new musicians. That's it for this time. So next time I will talk about 1990s to 2000, which will be the last. Thank you so much for watching the video, and see you soon.